Hey, what's up? I'm a diagnosed narcissist, but before I say the things that I'm going to say, keep in mind that I am not a licensed professional. So, with all that being said, here's the video that I said I would make if you saw my last video. So, misanthropy. I guess at this point, I should honestly just, address it right here, right now, because all throughout my videos, you've, heard me give my expression of like disgust for humanity in general. And a lot of people are probably just going to think, oh, yeah, well, misery loves company. But honestly, I don't really agree with that saying because it, gives the implication that misery goes out of its way to, find, like the company, so to speak. But honestly, I've always thought that misery honestly is company. There is no, you know, difference in people getting together and the notion of human beings being miserable. We can only have conflict as long as we're together. So I don't really agree with misery loves company. Pretty much misery is company, whether or not people want to admit that. And I guess I should just be upfront and say that happy people sort of disgust me, if I'm being, just like completely honest. Like the whole thing about like optimism is just absolutely absurd to me. And I don't know, perhaps it's just like the hierarchical thinking that I'm honest with, how we live in a world where everybody's like, you know, going through random labels of, like win or lose that's arbitrarily defined by people and, different groups and whatnot. And the only thing that I can, I guess, sort of encapsulate why people are able to live in blissful ignorance is because of, I guess I'll compare it to this, let's say. When you hear people say they don't really like watching the news because, stuff on it is like super depressing, like that's the ignorance that I see in everyday people when they think that like, oh, life is something to be cherished because, oh, we have all these blessings, quote unquote, as if like, you know there's some like inherent quality that you have a good life, when in actuality, no. There's always the flip side. Like if you're eating a good meal, someone else is starving to death. If you're perfectly healthy, more or less, somebody has, cancer, all this kind of stuff. But just as much as people can say, oh yeah, I don't really watch the news because, yeah, oh, it's too depressing. It's just, like the sad stories of like today or like whatever. That doesn't matter because honestly, it doesn't stop. So I think, like, the way I see it, it's literally just blatant ignorance. It's just people choosing not to be aware of how disgusting the world actually is. And, I fundamentally just, don't understand it because they say misery loves company, but misery is everywhere. Every single time you enjoy something, that is just you purposefully deluding yourself into thinking that, like, oh, there's nothing wrong happening somewhere else. Well, there is something wrong happening somewhere else. You're just choosing not to think about it. You have the luxury not to think about it. So I think honestly, it makes blessings like really hard to understand. When you grow up and a lot of people keep telling you that like, oh, you should be grateful for like the good things that you have, when in all honesty, it's all arbitrary and random. Like for example, why aren't you the starving African child, let's say? Like all of these factors that contributed to like, your blessings, quote unquote, like you had absolutely no say in them in the slightest. Like every single time you get something good in life, or you were, I don't know, let's just say like built in with like good nepotism. So, oh, you have a family that's like higher up and like you're, super privileged and like whatnot. All of that is just roll of the dice. So just as much as you have the privilege to like, literally turn off the news because you don't want to see depressing things, quote unquote, your entire life is easily just turning off all the horrible things that, are happening elsewhere. So, like, again, don't even tell me that misery loves company. misery is everywhere. So, like, sure, it is cynical, but every single time people say stuff like that, they act as if like, oh, yeah, you're like super edgy, quote unquote, or like something like that. But I mean, just like, it's honestly true though, because again, if you don't have to focus on those things, of course, life just looks like a blessing or whatever, and like all that kind of stuff. But in all honesty, we contribute to this system of suffering. Again, if you have food, no one else has food. But while you're eating, you're not thinking about those people. You have the privilege to not think about those people. If you have clean clothes on your back, oh, somebody has like torn up clothes, like, somewhere else. So I think as a narcissist, because I'm just aware of how hierarchies exist all the time, even when I have like, let's say these privileges too, like something to eat or, clothes to wear on my back that are decent enough, not torn, not stained, or like whatever, I literally know the flip side all the time. And because my identity is so shallow and like hollow, sure, I can feel good, but that never retains, honestly. Because despite how powerful I can feel at a moment, it's kind of weird. It's this like paradoxical thing because I start to think that, perhaps I actually do have more empathy than like most people. Because if they had empathy, and this is what I mean by that in this sense, as much as like I did, then I don't actually understand why people wouldn't be as miserable as I am, like 24/7. Because, oh, this food might taste, very good, quote unquote, and I'm super lucky to have it, but it might as well be the taste of someone else that's, starving. These perfectly fine clothes might as well be the equivalent of, the frustration and the struggle of somebody with fucking dirty clothes that are like hella itchy. So, okay, my clothes are fine right now, but I'm just imagining someone else going like this again and again and again. So, we live in a world where you either are just blissfully ignorant, which I see majority of people doing, or you kind of just have to accept that even if you think you're doing these like mundane, ordinary things, you're literally a monster and you contribute to the suffering. And with that being said, you are also the victim yourself. Because, for example, I don't have $1 million. So sure, when I'm thinking of people that are like less fortunate than, me, I feel better. But then like overall, I'm still part of the system that allows myself to still be victimized every single day that we live. So every single second that we exist, and ultimately this is why I think I'm like super misanthropic, is that, we are stomping on other people simultaneously while being stomped ourselves. And we, as, a lot of people that are, let's say, like privileged enough, like, because we're not the ones deliberately eating food in front of starving people, quote unquote, or, doing all these things, then we think we can just live in blissful ignorance. And in a way, to me, it's like, it's such a cognitive dissonance, honestly. So I don't know, like when I see things about people just saying, oh my gosh, narcissists are just these like miserable beings and like whatnot, I guess it really brings up to me like, oh yeah, the truth hurts. And that's why majority of humans on this earth are just a bunch of like, yeah, blissful, ignorant morons. So, I mean, if that's your thing, then like good for you. But like, honestly, I still feel this like disdain towards that. And I'm not even saying like I'm any better, but like in a way, if we accepted the world for like what it actually is, then I mean, yeah, it's really negative. It's really like pessimistic, honestly. But I'm inclined to think that like if we were to just actually accept reality like as it is, then we should all just collectively be miserable. Whether you're up here, in the middle, down here, like the only thing, arguably, that anybody has the right to. And yeah, people can say, oh, even if someone's rich, they might have like problems going. Like, yeah, I get that. They might have a set of problems that maybe I wouldn't necessarily be able to understand as like what are a billionaire's problems? Let's say I don't have a fucking $1 billion or some shit. But if you see reality, if you see this world, the only thing that anybody is entitled to, regardless of like whatever, is their set of problems. So therefore, life is garbage. And to like, restate again, blissful ignorance gets people through the day. So, you know, yeah, I'll just end it there, I guess.